Hey there, welcome to XR Industry Leaders with ArborXR. My name is Brad Scoggin, and I am the CEO and one of three co-founders of ArborXR. And we've had the opportunity of working with thousands of companies since 2016. And we've learned a ton about what it takes for XR to be successful in your organization.
And I'm Will Stackable, co-founder and CMO. This podcast is all about interviewing the leaders who are on the ground making XR happen today. True pioneers in the space, from Amazon, Walmart, and UPS to Coke, Pfizer, and beyond, to uncover the pitfalls, lessons learned, and secrets that you can use to help grow XR in your organization.
All right, well, today we get to sit down with Tommy Kopec. Tommy is the Senior Manager for Digital Medical Education at Zimmer Biomet. Tommy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It was fun. We were just talking. Tommy's calling in from Alabama today, and I'm originally from Oklahoma, so we were kind of, just talking about small town life in the Midwest. But maybe, Tommy, just to kick us off, tell us a little bit, kind of at a high level, what does Zimmer Biomet do?
Sure. We are a medical device manufacturer. And so if you think of joint replacement parts, those hardwares, that's what we do. We manufacture those, we install them. We don't install them. The healthcare providers install them. So my job is to help get those medical education initiatives and trainings accelerated, so our healthcare providers are prepared to do that in the operating room. So we manufacture the devices basically, and then we help the healthcare providers understand how to implement them and put them in the body. Got
it. That's very cool. So tell me too, we kind of did a little background on you. And so before you're at Zimmer, I know you worked as an instructor and you organized a lot of on-site, some remote training. So maybe tell us a little bit about the challenges that you faced when you were doing the web-based training.
Well, certainly everyone's familiar with the most recent pandemic of COVID-19. So I was actually teaching in higher education when that happened. And so we, just like everyone else, were forced to go online. And it was a great time to to get up to speed on online training and education. I think I had a leg up maybe on some other professions because it wasn't completely foreign. We had a lot of web-based, computer-based trainings before, but this was an opportunity to really expand that and see what else was going on out there. And so we utilize all kinds of I did anyway, new implements for like gamification of learning. That became a bigger component of my kind of CV of outlook for how to improve training and education. And that's something that we've kind of continued here at Zimmer Biomet, actually. One of the aspects that we do is, I'm sure we'll get into MR and XR, but we also do our website for surgeon focused or healthcare provider focused learning. The LMS we use, the learning management system we use there, has a gamification built into it. So we have ways to kind of track on a leaderboard, which is great. Healthcare providers probably tend to be a little competitive. And so it's neat to have, these kind of leaderboards that we can put up there and give people points and badges and all that for, completing learning tasks.
We're all just a bunch of big kids, right? We grew up playing games. That's very cool. And we talk a lot about COVID just being such an accelerant for technology adoption, right? And kind of forcing us into things that it was really hard for a season, and then kind of opened our eyes to maybe some more efficient ways of doing things. Maybe tell us a little bit about kind of your transition into XR, just in general, and then kind of how that led to your current role at Zimmer Biomet.
Sure. Yeah. So again, I was teaching in higher education, tenure track and all that, and I'm happy to say I was awarded tenure and promoted.
Oh, wait, yeah, we forgot to say you are Dr. Tommy Kopec. We should give honor where honors due. Yeah, there you go. Okay, keep going.
I'm a PhD, but yeah, so I was teaching. My background's in athletic training, so sports medicine and, kind of like the initial injury evaluation. So you watch a football or basketball game, basketball's going on now, someone gets hurt, the people that run out there on the court and do the initial assessment, that's my career. So that's where I started, kind of in healthcare. And then I loved it, but I loved teaching. So being able to get hands-on and teach either younger students, or when I became old enough and was certified, teaching, people who were assigned to me, as a preceptor, I just loved it. And so I pursued teaching, and, did the PhD, was teaching athletic training and healthcare and kinesiology courses. And, around the pandemic time, I just started opening my eyes to all these other cool things that are out there besides just the way I was teaching. There's other ways. And so, learning about some of these other, the mixed reality world and learning about what's, AR versus MR versus VR and kind of nailing that was exciting for me. Brad, you kind of mentioned it, kind of growing up playing video games. And I'm, maybe not quite middle-aged, but, throughout the 90s, we played tons of video games in the early 2000s, like when I was in grade school, high school, even college.
This was pre-Fortnite.
It was pre-Fortnite, so I may have only stuck to one game if I was.
I've got to ask, what was your go-to? Do you have a go-to game? Brad and I are both Halo back in the day, but
and before that, though, GoldenEye. Before that, right?
Oh, okay. So I was gonna say GoldenEye or Perfect Dark. Once we got the expansion pack for the Nintendo 64,
yes,
or wrestling. No Mercy was a big one.
You could do the whole Royal Rumble, get all your buddies out. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, but we definitely did the LAN parties. I'd laugh on the original Xbox. We had some, kind of tertiary friends from high school, but we all liked Halo, so it was like, okay, we'll kind of be real good friends on like Friday or Saturday. Come over, we'll hard line, like, don't peek over our shoulders, don't look at our TV screen.
The good old
Xbox
days.
Connect. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was cool. Now
I still have a gym bag full, like with 2 Xboxes in my whole setup and storage. That every once in a while I'm like, I want to pull it out for my kids. I don't know if they. Anyways,
I have like the bass guitar and like drums and a guitar for a rock band, for the Beatles rock band. That's just sitting in a closet. I'm like,
good times.
PlayStation 3 too, so I'm like, I don't even know what I'm going to do with it, but I have a hard time getting rid of it. Finding out there are different ways to engage learners, and that learning doesn't stop formally at college, high school, whatever. Like there's different ways. I started getting into instructional design and kind of seeing like learning development. And that led me to this job at Zimmer Biomet as, again, the senior manager for digital medical education, which is a really fancy way of saying, that we're trying to get our medical training and education endeavors up to, at this case, 2023. We want to make sure we're offering online learning, and then that it's substantial and that it's valid and worthy of, someone sitting there and interacting with it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. One of the things that interested me about Zimmer Biomet when we first started working with you guys is seeing that, okay, this is a company that has operations in, I think, more than 25 countries, sales in 100 plus countries, and you've got multiple interesting use cases with AR and VR. So I'd love to hear just a little bit about what is Zimmer Biomet doing. Maybe you could start with AR, talk a little bit about that, and then we can transition to VR.
Yeah, we have a strategic partnership that we're using AR to help clinicians in the operating room, so they're able to, there's a couple of different use cases. Really, the coolest way is we can get a CT scan and we can actually overlay that scan on top of the patient. So basically with these goggles or glasses, I guess, the headset allows you to look down at the patient, and obviously it's much different than VR where you can it's a pass through lens, so you can see everything that's going on. But we can overlay that anatomy on top of this individual's hip. And so as you insert tools, as you start making measurements, you get real-time feedback. You can see for yourself, like if there's a particular defect, that's readily apparent as you're planning, your next step in the surgery. So it's really pretty cool. Another use case would be, we have a proprietary kind of interactive suite of an operating room, and so we are able to show off some of that technology and all the technologies we have in the operating room by putting on the headset. And kind of a little simpler way of utilizing this headset is being able just to have live audio and video in the OR. And so if we're for training education, that's one of our big focuses. You can cast this to a larger screen so people, just like residents maybe would anyway, like kind of get in the theater to watch. They can see the microphones are built in, just like with the VR headsets. Microphones and speakers are built right in, so you can have a real dialogue or real question and answer kind of forum, while you're there with a live case. So really pretty cool.
Well, and I know we saw that there's that great news announcement that you guys are bringing the first FDA cleared mixed reality navigation system for hip replacement using mixed reality. It's interesting that it's just now we're starting to see some of these products come on the market. What's been your perspective on the timeline of how long it's take? We've been talking about AR and VR for forever, really for 30 years or whatever. But it seems that just now we're starting to see some of these real world applications that are being used in ORs and in other, for training and everything else around the world. But what's been your personal feel just as you've entered this in the timeline and what it takes to get XR into the real world?
Well, I think that there's still the intimidation of I'm laughing with you guys about playing video games, maybe putting on a headset, or the whole VR concept isn't that foreign. But out in the, I don't know, in industry, it's just been slower to adapt. They're slower to manufacture as well. So, as we go through our development cycles, I think some of the hesitation is it does take substantial, resources and effort and time to get it right, because what you don't want, if we think about gaming and, I just mentioned gamification, what we don't want is that gamification feel. So you don't want it to feel like a video game,
Right. Yeah.
when you're trying to prepare a surgeon or show somebody like, this is what all of our tools, we spend a lot of time with those CAD files, getting them just right. And it has all the disclaimers on the bottom of the tool. If you turn, they're incredibly detailed. So you don't want to undercut that by having like a cartoon feel. And so I think getting that feel is really important. And so I think it's probably a little bit of hesitation from kind of a wider, working audience. But you've had multiple guests on the show already who have kind of from big companies who, again, are showing the reliability of it and how valid this is to accelerate learning. Most of them have been kind of like onboarding. Ours is a little different. It is kind of onboarding. We're onboarding the healthcare professionals to, perform the surgery, safely and effectively using our tools and using our product. And so there's still an onboarding going on. It's maybe a little different, but ultimately it's the same goal. It's trying to get someone from, new to, proficient as quickly as possible. And I think that's where we're really shining, or where we are finding our kind of sweet spot with VR.
Well, change is always hard. And we talk, the silver lining of COVID kind of helping force some of this change. But FDA cleared is a big deal. There's some ISVs we talk with that have gotten insurance approval to pay for some of their applications. And I think that is a big moment that a lot of people aren't talking about just for XR overall. When you start seeing that level of approval, when you have insurance paying for things, that is a huge step of maturity, I think, that we should all be celebrating for where XR is at today.
Absolutely, yeah. And, that's funny, too, to think about AR as kind of this newer technology, big push with that. And we're just now getting where VR is awesome and really stable, and incredible. And already you're seeing like AR kind of spinning off, and there's a big push for that to, how can we use this and helping people understand. I think part of my job and my team's job is to help people understand the differences of VR, AR. Again, we kind of think of AR the way we're using it as Zimmer Biomet for, again, kind of more clinical applications versus VR's. We kind of use it for like training and education purposes. With that said, there's tons of exceptions and crossovers there, but it's so neat to see VR's finally kind of, people are getting comfortable with it. The headsets are becoming more affordable as well.
Yeah.
There's some really high tier models maybe that violate that, but they're pretty accessible. Even when we take them to shows and show off some of the procedures we have, a number of people are like, well, how can I get these, how can I get this on my headset? Because people already have headsets, because again, they're really user friendly, and the price point isn't as dramatic as it used to be. So I think that we still have VR for a long time. But I'm excited about all technology. So AR coming on the scene and kind of, getting that rocket strapped to it, I'm all for it. We're going to jump on board of that too. At Zimmer Biomet, we try and be bold, we try and be innovative. And so when we see these new technologies, we want to be on the front end of that.
Definitely.
You talked about AR, and there's some fantastic new headsets coming on the market even soon. Magic Leap's coming out with theirs. It's available, but it's starting to get better penetration now. Let's switch over to VR. I mean, we can go to Best Buy and pick up a Quest for a couple $100s. How is Zimmer Biomet thinking about and using VR right now?
Yeah, well, again, it's so easy now to get into VR. I want to encourage everyone, if anyone's listening and hasn't tried it out, go for it, because the barrier to entry is so low. And that's a great thing, because we want more people using it and more people being comfortable with it and more people adopting it. Mm-hmm. So the way we generally use it is in this small little town in the middle of Indiana, Warsaw, Indiana, is where our manufacturing and a number of medical device companies' manufacturing plants are. That's, if you look into Warsaw, the history of Warsaw, it's funny how many orthopedic companies have spun off from this small little town. But if you drive through, it's still a small town. There's no doubt about it. But it has such a cool history to it. Anyways, that's where we have our headquarters. And so we have a fleet of headsets that stay there that we basically loan out as necessary. So generally, our salespeople will contact us and say, hey, I have an event coming up. I want to show off blah, blah, blah procedure with blah, blah, blah surgeon. So there's a whole request form. And we, overnight them a headset or 2 or 3 or whatever they need. We obviously use the Arbor system to help kind of manage that. And that's incredibly, it's been a game changer for us. So being able to manage the fleet, because I'm over the Americas, but we're a global company. And so we work with our partners in, EMEA, APAC, Australia, New Zealand. The rest of Latin America and Canada. So we have headsets everywhere. So being able to track them, see what like software and firmware versions they are. We just, developed another module like just earlier today, actually. And it passed all the routing that it needed to. So it's as simple as a couple clicks. And now that module is live on, everyone's headset. It's just incredible. So the salespeople will request those headsets. We send them out. And they do the live demonstrations or event demonstration right in front of the surgeon or the group of surgeons. And, it can be helpful for helping them understand any sticky points before a surgeon gets into the OR. It's great for the reps themselves to freshen up on a procedure potentially. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the everyday use that we have. We do go to bigger trade shows and events as well, and we kind of showcase it. And so, we'll have a TV that has a procedure kind of on loop, gets people to look over at us, kind of get their attention. They come over, we try and get them in that headset and give them that immersive experience. I mean, that's what, again, the big difference for me between VR and AR is that immersive experience. With VR, you're fully there, you're fully immersed. AR just has a completely different use case. And so you don't need that immersive. You need to pass through, but so I think it's important to get people the experience of what does this feel like? And it's incredible. It takes a couple minutes to figure out how do your hands work to grab the tools and all that. But then you start watching people and you're like, oh, I can figure out what step they are on the procedure, the way they're like holding their hand or their, whatever hand motion they're doing. So even though they're standing in the middle of the floor looking like a goof, you can be like, oh, okay, I know what step you're on. Okay.
Yeah, the classic VR has a marketing problem that nobody looks good in a headset, but when you put on the headset, it's amazing.
It's great. So many people are like, "Can you take a picture of me? Can you take a video of me?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy."
It's not going to be the same.
We started out years ago with VR arcades, and it was a funny thing we did not expect, that because it's such an isolating experience that people would be embarrassed. Like they'd come in with their friends, but they would be embarrassed to put on the headset and have people watch them. So yeah, there are those kind of funny little.
So it was big to have to be able to cast to a TV was actually really helpful, because then the other people who aren't in the headset can at least have a 2D representation of what you're seeing.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what kind of feedback have you been hearing either from your sales reps or from people on the ground at the trade shows. Has it been helpful to have this tool?
Without a doubt. So we had one of the industry's bigger, or one of the biggest events that the industry has, double AOS, or the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, was in Las Vegas this year, but in March, and we had over 70 people over 2.5 days come, and 70 unique cases of people coming and putting the headsets on and trying out. A lot of those were actually on the younger side, so like medical students, so maybe residents, but maybe even still in med school. And maybe, I think that might be one of our target audiences, because they're the ones who are going to need more reps. So again, if you think of, med school resident, they don't get a whole lot of hands-on practice in a live case. And so you reduce the travel cost, the logistics of them going to a lab or a cadaver lab. You don't have the necessity to have a specimen there. Or if they use like sawbones, there's just no destruction. There's no loss of resources. If you make a mistake, it's, there's a zero harm possibility, right? So you just restart the module and you just try again until you can nail the entire process. And so I think that's, invaluable for us. And so the sales people have been loving it, because every time they see it, every time we have a new module, a new procedure released, they're like, oh my God. Of course, they keep being like, what else? When are you going to have this one? When are you going to have this one? But it's so helpful for them to see it. And then when they show their surgeons, again, the surgeons are blown away and just saying, like, man, this is so impressive. And, again, you have that initial learning curve of like, oh, this is what my hands look like. But then a minute or two later, they're like, okay, they're grabbing the tool, they're grabbing the leg, they're putting this in, putting that in. And it's so impressive to me how quickly people ramp up to that level of, again, I don't know if it's proficiency, but it's certainly comfort. You kind of go from looking like, oh, I look like a robot, to like, oh, now I'm smoothly moving and doing it. So the salespeople have been loving it. When we are able to showcase it, absolutely people love it. I will say, you kind of mentioned, Will, about casting. So casting is still maybe like the final frontier of VR stability. Yep. We still have issues with it. We've tried a couple different solutions, and until a headset's ready to kind of go old school and just, have a hard line from the headset to the TV, which I know is ugly and kind of is antithetical to technology, but casting's still a little bit of an issue, certainly for us. And so we instead will have a TV that's looped, again, a recording like an MP4 or a video file or whatever of our procedure. And so that kind of helps satisfy that, that kind of, you don't have to be in VR to kind of see it and appreciate it.
You hit on something that I think is super important to us. You talk about, with the medical students or residents, the ability to get in and go through this procedure again and again without the waste, without the mess. And that's just so important. I mean, when we think about VR specifically, XR, but VR specifically, we think about it's something that should give us our time back. You shouldn't, train at your house, in your dorm. Don't go in. You don't have to go in and mess with a cadaver. You're not going through cadavers, right? There's just a lot of value there. That hits home for us when you think about the time savings that we can have to kind of get back into real life. Absolutely, and that's crucial. As we think about medical students and residents who maybe have a little more time, but like the more you advance in your career. Exactly. Or if we just talk about video games again, I don't know the last time I played a video game, exactly. Right? Like right. Time just evaporates.
What is a video game? Yeah.
Yeah. At this point, I don't even know what's out anymore. But the same idea, for healthcare providers that time becomes so precious, right? And so if we can accelerate learning, if we can accelerate that onboarding kind of experience, then that's where we're going to see the biggest win. And I think we are seeing that. I think there's published research out there about some of our procedures being utilized, and people. This one particular study I have in mind had people either just read the surgical technique guides for an hour, or they got to practice in VR for an hour. And then both groups went and practiced on the sawbone, the model, and with it, obviously the VR group
performed better. They had fewer mistakes. They had
Yes.
better accuracy with all the steps. It's just such a great learning tool. And so, well, kind of to hit back on something you asked about, maybe not quite barriers, but it's kind of the explosion of VR. I think the more we can demonstrate that, again, the ROI, we're seeing some great effects from this. And we're going to continue to kind of push that and help people understand that using this virtual reality or augmented reality, just accelerates your learning or your increase in knowledge.
Yeah, so I kind of want to zoom in there a little bit. We're hearing this over and over again from organizations large and small that there's massive ROI, not only time savings, but also, your Hip Insight product is actually allowing for more accurate surgeries, which means out of 1,000 surgeries, you're going to have fewer errors. So if it's this transformative, why aren't we seeing this technology everywhere? And I guess the question is, what have you experienced, and what are you seeing are some of the kind of pain points in getting this thing from pilot stage, the friction points from getting from pilot stage to scale?
Sure. We are a global brand, a global company. And so one of the bigger problems that we'll encounter, which isn't directly tied to VR, is localization of clearances of procedures. So again, maybe something's cleared in Mexico that's not cleared in Colombia, or, versus Canada versus, we kind of cover region, EMEA, but, England's different than, Northern Ireland, or, what I mean? Or Poland. Yeah. So keeping all those regions lined up is difficult. And so, we certainly rely on our local colleagues there to help us understand what's available and what's not. Again, a great thing about the ArborXR system is that we're able to individually, unclick a procedure that's not yet available in, X country. So it's really convenient for us from that fleet management perspective to be able to isolate what's on each individual headset. That's our big problem with, like the application side. I don't know, other friction points or why everyone else isn't using it. I do still think that there's that intimidation of putting a headset on. And I can tell you from people, from within our company, there's a hesitation of just trying to learn something very new. There's not a whole lot of, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of applicable lateral steps. So if you think of like using a new spreadsheet, if you're using Smartsheet for the first time, well, if you've learned Excel, or, you can kind of get by with Excel, you can probably figure out Smartsheet. Like it does a lot more, and there's just such a great reason to use this new thing, but you kind of have something to compare it to. I think that people have the idea that VR doesn't have that comparison. I think as we develop VR, we keep pushing for this technology. I think our job is to show them you really do. If we do it VR right, then you will see there won't be this big friction. You'll seamlessly kind of fit in. It'll start making sense. I mentioned that people who are kind of clumsy with their hands at first, just takes a couple minutes and you start figuring out, oh, this button controls kind of this grip, but then if I push this button, it powers on the power drill, or, whatever tool they're using in the OR. And it's rewarding. So back to, getting into teaching for the first time, like it still sparks that kind of, when you see those aha moments, it still is powerful, where you're like, oh, they're making that connection of, this is how I'm using my hands in this immersive virtual environment. Right. So I think, we have to break down that barrier of intimidation. We kind of talked about cost. And when people want to purchase their own headsets, I'm like, man, you don't have to buy them through us, buy them from wherever, get them on a Black Friday deal, or, whatever deal's coming up, again, it is still a couple $100, which maybe not everyone can swing, but compared to what it was a few years ago, I think that as more competition gets in the marketplace, that's going to keep going down. And again, hopefully that friction will decrease. And I think that, for instance, this your product, but then also this podcast is helpful in that front to help people understand that from all these different backgrounds and careers and industries, there's an application. I think we're all kind of hitting on the same thing, just being able to, you mentioned saving time, just expediting and making more efficient use of our time. And I think from a medical training education standpoint, we at Zimmer Biomet have definitely felt that.
I think you hit on something that, it really is a collective effort for all of us to attack these little friction points to see this technology move forward. Technology that we're all excited about. Those of us who are in it, that we're seeing these incredible results. Tommy, you get a 10 out of 10 for hitting the Arbor plug script. So I thank you for that. Just kidding. But as we wrap,
you guys sent me.
Venmo, right? Yeah. So as we wrap here, I'd love to hear your take on, as an educator at heart, like where do you see, so an educator who's in healthcare, where do you see kind of the future of this going?
I've maybe this sounds too pie in the sky, but it's almost limitless, right? Like your imagination is what's capping, the utilization of this, because we have, without getting too much into like what we have in development, the way that we are developing VR right now is, very OR focused and procedure focused, but the applications beyond that are extremely wide open and ready to be, kind of delved. And we have some projects down the pipeline that are going to explore that. I think that VR has this unique ability, again, to get you immersive without you having to travel anywhere. I can sit here in my office in Birmingham, Alabama, and can be in a virtual operating room. I can be in a collaborative mode, so me and my partners and a surgeon and a resident can all be, in 4 different places, and all meet in that VR operating room and see all the steps that we need to do to complete this task. I just think it's incredible. So yeah, from a educational standpoint, I think that, again, there's no real, maybe that's too, I don't know, Pollyanna. It's limitless. We have all the ability, all that runway ahead of us for how we want to use it. If it's collaborating, if it's doing more intense, maybe training or evaluation periods, we're have a couple of internal dialogues about kind of formalizing some of these VR procedures and I think some of your other guests have shared that too, of having like an assessment built into it. Again, you're at a low risk, immersive virtual environment. Like I think we need to really hit that nail on the head and understand the kind of blessing that is, that there is no risk, there's no logistical nightmare to interact with. You just hit restart, from a getting away from like game over, video game stuff. Like at the end of the day, you can just hit restart and try again, right? And get as many reps as you can. So from an educational standpoint, I love that ability to make progress and immediately try again.
Yeah. No, I love that. The sky's the limit. The sky's the limit for a low risk virtual environment for what you can do. I think that's just a beautiful, beautiful picture. And especially, from a company like Zimmer Biomet, who's definitely a leader, you've already let out with an FDA cleared module, which is really cool. So, Tommy, this has been great. We really appreciate your time. I know you're too busy to play video games just like us, so your time is valuable. But thanks so much for sitting down with us today.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you inviting me on there, and we're proud for Zimmer Biomet to be bold and innovative.
Thanks, Tommy.
Thank you guys.
Well, that was a fun interview. The whole time, we got to talk about Halo, we got to talk about GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, and honestly, the whole time I'm thinking, being from a small town, Oklahoma, and it's lunchtime, I'm thinking about a small town diner with some chicken fried steak. But that was great talking to Tommy. I think to me, the way we ended that, kind of this just encapsulated the whole. What's exciting about what they're doing is you've got somebody with the authority of an FDA cleared VR application who is dreaming, the limitless dreams about what could happen in a risk-free virtual immersive environment, which and that, to me, that's very exciting.
Yeah, it's true. I love talking to companies like this, and Tommy it was a real treat. It's just interesting that now we're seeing big companies using both AR and VR, multiple use cases. For us, it was new to talk to somebody that's using VR for sales, being at a conference, being able to demonstrate some of their technologies in a way they couldn't before. And then on the other end, surgeons putting on mixed reality device and being able to do hip replacements and knee replacements and other types of very complicated surgeries more effectively, more accurately. I mean, that's like sci-fi. It's wild. It's real world.
Yeah.
It's happening right now.
It is. Well, thank you all so much for listening. Make sure you listen or subscribe wherever you consume podcasts, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks.